Ethan Hayes was the golden boy of the investment world. By 28, he had amassed a fortune that most only dreamed of. His days were a whirlwind of high-stakes deals, power lunches, and extravagant parties. He lived in a penthouse overlooking the city, drove a car that turned heads, and believed his success was solely a testament to his own brilliance and relentless drive. Compassion was a word rarely in his vocabulary, and the struggles of the less fortunate were a distant, almost abstract concept. He saw the homeless on the streets, the beggars at traffic lights, but they were mere blurs in his periphery, reminders of what he had risen above. The fall, visuals, news headlines flashing, Hayes investments under scrutiny, massive losses reported, millionaire mogul faces investigation. Show Ethan looking stressed, phone calls going unanswered, his luxurious lifestyle slowly shrinking. End with him being escorted out of his office building. The world, however, has a way of humbling even the most seemingly invincible. A series of unforeseen market crashes, coupled with some ethically questionable decisions that finally caught up with him, sent Ethan's empire tumbling down with terrifying speed. Overnight, his carefully constructed world imploded, lawsuits were filed, assets were frozen, and the media, once fawning, now feasted on his downfall. His friends, or rather, the people who had benefited from his wealth, vanished like smoke. He found himself alone, stripped of his fortune, his reputation in tatters, and facing potential legal repercussions. The penthouse was gone, the sports car repossessed. He was a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered in the same circles that once celebrated him. The descent, visuals, Ethan looking increasingly disheveled, wandering the streets, sleeping in parks or on benches. Show him struggling to understand his new reality, trying to buy food with cards that are declined, feeling the pangs of hunger for the first time. Ethan's fall was not just financial. It was a brutal descent into a reality he never knew existed. He was adrift in a city that had once been his playground, now a cold and indifferent maze. He quickly learned the harsh realities of being broke, the gnawing hunger, the biting cold, the judgment in the eyes of those who still had their security. His expensive suits were now rumpled and dirty, his confident stride replaced by a weary shuffle. Shame and regret were constant companions. He tried to find work, but his tarnished reputation preceded him. No one wanted to touch the man who had so spectacularly crashed and burned. For the first time in his life, Ethan experienced true desperation. He was utterly alone and without hope. The encounter. Visuals. Show Ethan sitting on a park bench, looking defeated. An elderly beggar, weathered and kind-faced, approaches him slowly. Focus on the beggar's worn hands as he offers a piece of bread. One particularly bleak afternoon, huddled on a park bench, his stomach aching with hunger he hadn't felt since childhood, Ethan was approached by an elderly beggar. The man was frail, his clothes worn and patched, his eyes holding a quiet wisdom. He moved with a slow, deliberate kindness that surprised Ethan. Without a word, the beggar reached into a tattered bag and pulled out a piece of stale bread. It looked hard and unappetizing, but to Ethan, the smell was suddenly the most enticing aroma he had ever encountered. He hesitated, a flicker of his old pride warring with the overwhelming need. The offering, visuals, close-up of Ethan reluctantly taking the bread. Show his hands still bearing the remnants of his former wealth, a faint mark where a watch used to be, accepting this humble offering. The beggar simply held out the bread, his gaze gentle and understanding. Something in the man's eyes broke through Ethan's remaining defenses. With a mumbled, "Thank you," a word that felt foreign on his tongue, Ethan accepted the offering. He broke off a small piece and chewed slowly, the dry bread feeling surprisingly substantial, a small spark of warmth spreading through his empty stomach. The stunned silence, visuals, Ethan eating the bread, the beggar watching him patiently. After a few moments, Ethan looks up at the beggar. a question in his eyes. They sat in silence for a few moments, Ethan consuming the meager offering with a desperate gratitude. He looked at the beggar, truly saw him for the first time. He saw the lines etched on his face, the quiet dignity in his posture despite his destitution. A question formed in Ethan's mind, a question that had been nagging at him since his fall. The question. Visuals. Ethan speaking, his voice hoarse and filled with a mix of confusion and genuine curiosity. Gathering his courage, Ethan asked, his voice rough, You gave me this. You have so little yourself. Why?" The beggar looked at him, a faint smile touching his lips. "Son," he said, his voice soft but clear, "I've learned that the emptiness in your pockets is nothing compared to the emptiness in your heart. You looked lost, truly lost. I've been there. And sometimes all it takes is a little bread, not to fill your stomach, but to remind you that you're still human, that someone sees you. Besides," he added, his eyes twinkling slightly, "I've been given much kindness in my time. It's only right to pass it on." Ethan was stunned. He had expected a lecture, perhaps a demand for something in return, or maybe just indifference. But this simple act of kindness, accompanied by these profound words, struck him with a force far greater than any financial loss. He had been so consumed by the pursuit of wealth and status that he had forgotten the fundamental connection between human beings. He had built walls around himself, seeing others as either stepping stones or irrelevant obstacles. This beggar, who had nothing in the eyes of the world, had offered him not just bread, but a glimpse of something far more valuable: empathy, compassion, and the simple recognition of shared humanity. The encounter left Ethan deeply shaken. The beggar didn't ask for anything, didn't judge him for his past. His simple act of generosity and his insightful words planted a seed in Ethan's hardened heart. For the first time since his downfall, Ethan felt a flicker of something other than despair. It was a nascent sense of hope, tinged with a profound understanding of how far he had strayed from true value. He spent the rest of the day in quiet contemplation, the beggar's words echoing in his mind. This encounter became a turning point. Ethan didn't magically regain his fortune, but he began a slow and arduous journey of rebuilding his life, this time on a different foundation. He took on any work he could find, no task beneath him. He started volunteering at a local soup kitchen, serving meals to the homeless, listening to their stories. He began to see the world through a different lens, one that valued human connection over material possessions. The emptiness the beggar had spoken of began to fill, not with wealth, but with a sense of purpose and genuine connection to others. Years passed. Ethan, through hard work and a newfound sense of integrity, eventually found success again, but it was a different kind of success. He built a business that valued people over profit, one that gave back to the community. He never forgot the lesson he learned from the beggar on the park bench. One day, years later, Ethan was walking through the same park and saw the familiar figure sitting on the same bench. He approached him, not with the arrogance of a former millionaire, but with the humility of a fellow human being. This time, Ethan was able to offer him more than just a mumbled thank you and a piece of stale bread.